You're looking at the Hanging Temple, a 500-year-old wooden structure clamped to a cliff in Shanxi, China. No foundation, no steel, just wood, friction, and 1,000 years of nerve.
That wooden box isn't sitting on solid ground. It's pinned to a cliff face, 40+ meters up, held there by little more than wedges of wood jammed into cracks in the rock. Hundreds of tons of oak and fir, suspended over an empty drop, doing exactly zero, falling for 15 centuries. No steel. No bolts. No foundation trench. Just timbers, gravity, and geometry working out an argument they've never lost. That's the part that stops people cold. We look at it and we keep waiting for the catch. Stand on the valley floor and look north. The Hanging Temple clings to the west face of Hengshan, one of China's 5 sacred peaks, at a spot where the cliff leans out and down like a wave about to break. The rock here is a near-vertical pillar of limestone, eroded over millennia into shelves and hollows. Builders didn't choose a gentle slope, they chose the one place a normal architect would run from. Below, the Han River flows past in a cold, constant rush, and in spring the meltwater turns the gorge into a throat of noise. The temple sits above that roar, tucked into a shadow that keeps the sun off most of the day, which is cosmetic comfort, because the real reason for the site is written in the stone. This is the risky north. Gusts funnel through the valley, winters drop hard below freezing, and the cliff face itself is alive, shedding flakes and slabs. Every mason who ever worked on a mountain shrine would tell you the same: high is bad, exposed is worse. Hang a structure on a place this steep and this weather-blasted, and you're inviting collapse on purpose. Yet the temple held. So the curiosity runs the other way. The danger isn't the danger. The danger is that a thing this fragile-looking refuses to follow the physics everyone expects. The mountain is brutal, the valley is loud, the axis between them is a thin strip of old wood, and for 1,500 years that strip simply decided not to fall. What you notice next is the quiet. For all that fierce geography, the temple itself sits in a stillness you don't meet in most shrines. No crowd thundering up a stairway, no vendors shouting at the gate, just stone, shadow, and the hush of a building that seems to be listening. Part of that is the location, so high and so tucked that sound falls away. Part of it is intention. The people who built here weren't trying to dominate the landscape, they were trying to hide inside it. That's the heart of the paradox. A fortress of faith that looks like it's clinging on for dear life, yet carries itself with the calm of a place that was never in doubt. The wilder the setting, the steadier the mood. The more the cliff threatens, the more the temple refuses to notice. Walk in, and the first surprise is not the wood, it's the company. In one narrow, creaky balcony you'll find figures of the Buddha, statues of Taoist immortals, and tablets honoring Confucius, all kept side by side in the same small shrine. 3 traditions that spent centuries elsewhere arguing doctrine, here sharing a single shelf of timber over a drop. That never happens by accident. It's a quiet, deliberate statement. In the most dangerous place a person can build, the walls between belief systems collapse. The peril made them generous. Danger, apparently, is the one thing that can talk Buddhists, Taoists, and Confucians into standing shoulder to shoulder and just letting each other be. So how does something with no foundation not fall? That's the question that pulls almost every visitor up short, and the answer is a kind of reverse engineering made of subtle choices. First, the cliff itself becomes the structure. The builders drove horizontal wooden beams deep into holes chiseled into the rock, and the canyon wall now carries the load the way Earth normally would. The temple is less a building and more a wooden extension of the mountain, a prosthetic shelf bolted, philosophically, onto the geology. Second, gravity does most of the work. Because the tiers lean back into the cliff face rather than standing proud of it, the weight of the whole assembly presses inward against the rock. Every heavy beam, every roof tile, every stone statue pushes the building toward the mountain instead of away from it. It's the opposite of a cantilever. A cantilever fights gravity and loses over time. This design embraces gravity and uses it as a clamp. The harder things want to fall, the harder they wedge together. Third, the joints. Chinese timber construction avoids nails and rigid connectors in favor of interlocking brackets, mortise and tenon joints held by compression and friction. The result is a framework that can flex. When the wind shoves, the whole building rocks microscopically, absorbs the energy, and settles back true. Concrete cracks under that kind of movement. Wood, fitted this way, breathes. An engineer will tell you this is a lesson in tunable stiffness and load paths, but watch it in a storm, and it reads more like a living thing, shifting its weight to keep its feet. Add the four corners anchoring into hollows, the beams that never quite touch the bedrock so the floorboards can settle without splitting, and the whole logic becomes a quiet masterpiece of doing more with less. No steel to rust, no foundation to crack, no rigid joints to snap. Every failure mode that modern construction has to engineer against was simply never introduced in the first place. The temple isn't strong despite missing a foundation, it's stable because of what it does instead. And here's the uncomfortable part, none of it was designed with the math we'd reach for today. There were no computer models, no load tables penciled from tensile tests, no blueprints that break a building into columns and bending moments and safety factors. The builders worked in ratios, in remembered proportions, in timber spans that had been proven over generations of temple and bridge and pavilion. They didn't calculate the cliff's support capacity, they felt it, through centuries of trial and the silent evidence of what had already stood. Yet the numbers end up almost arrogant in their correctness. Modern engineers who've surveyed the site can map the load paths, the compression under the westward tiers, the friction at the beam sockets, and what they find is a design that behaves as if someone had run the calculations, centuries early, by hand and by eye. It's a mirror held up to our own confidence. We trust the spreadsheet, the simulation, the certificate. They trusted experience, accumulated so slowly and so thoroughly that it arrived at the same answer without needing a single equation. The gap isn't that they were primitive and were advanced. The gap is that they reached the finish line by a different road, and on this cliff, their road still holds. Try to rebuild it exactly, and the project quietly grinds to a halt. Modern crews can source the wood, match the dimensions, even reverse engineer every joint, and still the thing resists reproduction. Somewhere between the seasoned timber, the cliff's own memory of where to hold, and a craft that lived in the hands instead of the plans, the original keeps a lead that blueprints can't close. We built skyscrapers and suspension bridges, and this small wooden box still beats us at our own game. Progress, on this cliff, looks a lot like going backward. And the longer you look, the less sense it makes, a temple that defies every rule of gravity.